Awaken your spirit, chosen ones. When people can't understand you, they start monitoring you like a strange phenomenon they're scared to misinterpret. Somewhere right now, a group of people is probably watching everything you do, your habits, your reactions, your choices, hoping the constant surveillance will finally reveal the hidden code behind your personality. Yet the more they observe, the more confused they become, because nothing about you fits into their neat little categories. It's almost entertaining at this point, like watching someone stare at a puzzle that comes with no edges, no picture, and definitely no instructions. And here's the fact they'll never admit. The human mind tends to fear what it cannot label, and your entire existence is one long refusal to be labeled. Their confusion isn't random, it's scientific. When the brain encounters something it can't predict, it treats it like an anomaly that needs extra attention. That's why you're monitored like a rare species, one that refuses to behave the way they expect. They replay your actions, dissect your silence, and overanalyze your calm, thinking you'll eventually slip or reveal some hidden weakness. But the joke's on them. Your life isn't a soap opera, and you're not here to give them weekly episodes. You're just living, growing, evolving, while they're stuck squinting from the sidelines like confused spectators trying to decode a plot twist that was never meant for them. The real suspense begins when they realize that the more they watch you, the less they understand. You remain unpredictable, unboxed, and unbothered. The one person they can study 24/7 and still walk away with nothing but a headache and a notebook full of unanswered theories. Number 1. They study you constantly because your unpredictability exposes the limits of their intelligence. People who watch you around the clock expect you to eventually fall into a pattern, something simple, something predictable, something they can chart and explain. But the more they observe, the more they realize you don't move like the people they're used to. You don't respond the way they expect. You don't repeat the same emotional cycles, and you don't react based on fear or pressure. This single truth alone forces them to confront something uncomfortable. Their intelligence has limits, and you're brushing right up against those limits without even trying. Your unpredictability isn't about being mysterious for the sake of attention, and it's not because you're deliberately trying to confuse anyone. It's simply how you are wired. You think differently, you process differently, and you make decisions based on internal clarity, not external noise. Most people can't relate to that because they spend their lives seeking approval, following trends, copying behavior, or waiting for someone else to validate their choices. So when they watch someone who moves on instinct, purpose, and self-trust, their minds hit a wall. And the more they try to figure you out, the more contradictions they run into. They notice moments where you should have broken, but didn't. Times where you could have reacted, but chose peace instead. Situations where most people would have tried to impress others, but you stayed grounded, focused, and uninterested in applause. These things don't align with the predictable human scripts they've memorized. What frustrates them most is the fact that you're consistent, but not in the way they expected. You're consistent in your growth, not your patterns. You evolve instead of repeating yourself, and that makes their surveillance useless. They can record every move you make, but they still can't predict your next step, because every step comes from a place they cannot access, your internal world. Your existence becomes a reminder that intelligence isn't just about collecting information. It's about understanding it. And while they gather data, you gather depth. You're not hiding a secret. They're simply not capable of interpreting your truth on the level it exists. Number 2, their surveillance keeps failing because you operate from motives they've never experienced, self-respect and internal direction. People who monitor you expect your behavior to come from the same place theirs does: insecurity, pressure, or the need to be seen. They assume everyone moves based on outside forces because that's how they live. They react to attention, opinions, and gossip, They change their actions depending on who's watching. But when they study you, they keep running into a wall. They can't find the trigger that pushes you. They can't find the weakness that motivates you. They can't find the crowd you perform for. And that's because there isn't one. Your actions come from a place they haven't tapped into themselves. You do things because they align with your values, not because they'll earn you applause or approval. You make decisions based on a compass that points inward, not outward. And to people who don't know what that feels like, it looks strange, it looks suspicious, it looks confusing. When people rely on external validation, they naturally assume everyone else does too. That's why they study you so closely. They think they're missing something. Maybe there's a hidden influence. Maybe you're pretending. Maybe there's someone behind the scenes guiding you. They keep searching for explanations that don't exist, because the truth is too simple for them to accept. You respect yourself enough to walk your own path, even when no one is clapping. This is why their surveillance keeps failing. They don't know how to interpret someone who acts from internal clarity. They're used to reading people who are easily swayed by attention or pressure. But you're driven by something else, inner conviction. And conviction is hard to track because it doesn't change based on who's watching. It frustrates them. It exposes their own lack of self-direction. They see your independence and realize they've been outsourcing their decision-making to other people their whole lives. And nothing confuses a person more than watching someone live in a way they've never had the courage to try. That's why you remain unreadable. Not because you're complicated, but because they've never met someone who doesn't need the world's permission to be who they are. Number 3, they're confused because you don't break under pressure. You get sharper. Most people have a predictable reaction when life tightens around them. They panic, crumble, or act out of desperation. Pressure exposes their weak spots instantly, and anyone watching can map their behavior like a basic diagram. But when people observe you, they don't see the reaction they expect. Instead of becoming frantic or unstable, you become clearer, calmer, and more focused. And this alone throws them off more than anything else. They watch closely because pressure is supposed to reveal the truth about a person. They expect it to expose your fears, your limits, your impulses. But with you, the opposite happens. Pressure doesn't break you, it refines you. It sharpens your instincts, tightens your priorities, and trims away anything that doesn't matter. You don't explode. You don't melt, you adapt. And the moment someone adapts instead of collapsing, the whole psychological playbook gets ruined. Your ability to stay centered under stress makes people question everything they assumed about you. They wonder if you're hiding something, if you're secretly unaffected, or if you simply don't feel pressure the way others do. But the truth is much simpler. You've learned how to turn pressure into clarity. You've learned how to use difficult moments as checkpoints instead of breaking points. This creates confusion for the ones who monitor you, because they can't manipulate or predict someone who doesn't emotionally collapse on schedule. They don't understand how you can still make wise choices when the world is pushing against you. They don't understand how you maintain your sense of direction while others are losing their balance. And they definitely don't understand how you can go through tough situations without becoming bitter or reckless. Your resilience disrupts their expectations. It takes the power out of their hands because they can't weaken someone who transforms struggle into strategy. Every time you rise under pressure, they lose another piece of the mental picture they were trying to build about you. And deep down, it bothers them. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you're doing something they never mastered, turning pressure into progress instead of letting it destroy you. Number 4, their expectation that your habits would expose you backfires because your character exposes them instead. People watching you assume they'll find answers in the little things, the way you move, what you say, how you react in everyday moments. They expect patterns, routines, and behaviors to reveal the real you. But the truth is, your habits don't betray you. They highlight your discipline, self-control, and consistency. Every routine, every choice, every small act is a reflection of your internal standards, not a window for them to exploit. And while they're busy scanning your life for clues, your presence ends up revealing more about them than about you. Their obsession with reading you turns into a mirror of their own weaknesses. The more they focus on your habits, the more they notice their own impatience, their own inconsistencies, and their own insecurities. Your calm, measured approach to life exposes their impulsiveness. Your ability to stick to principles highlights their compromises. Your quiet confidence reminds them of the self-doubt they try to hide behind scrutiny. Without realizing it, they're the ones laid bare. Their lack of depth and self-mastery standing in stark contrast to your solidity. Your life doesn't give them material to dissect because you live from integrity, not performance. You don't act for attention, and you don't fold under observation. Habits that might seem predictable are anchored in purpose, not pattern. So every step they take trying to figure you out only pushes them further into confusion. They start seeing contradictions in their own expectations rather than contradictions in you. This reversal is what unnerves them most. They've trained themselves to analyze, categorize, and judge. But here the tables turn. Your actions don't fit into their assumptions, and your steady character becomes a silent indictment of their instability. They realize, often too late, that monitoring someone like you doesn't uncover secrets. It uncovers their own shortcomings. By the time they think they've seen enough, they're staring at themselves reflected in your life, realizing the answers they sought were never about you. They were about what they lack. Number 5, their obsession proves you're already above their level. No one monitors what they don't fear. People spend countless hours watching you because deep down, they sense something they can't touch. It's not curiosity. They're not trying to admire or learn. They're trying to understand, to predict, to control. And the fact that they keep failing, the fact that they can't seem to map your moves, reveals the truth they're terrified to admit. You're operating on a level they can't reach. Surveillance, in its essence, is a sign of respect twisted into fear. No one obsessively watches someone they see as equal or below. You're already above their comprehension, and their constant monitoring is proof. They study every reaction, every nuance, hoping to uncover a flaw or weakness that will make you human in a way they can manage. But the more they dig, the more glaring your superiority becomes. You don't seek approval or validation. You don't scramble under pressure or rely on outside influence to dictate your next step. Every decision, every movement, every small victory quietly reinforces the fact that your existence doesn't belong in the world they've built for themselves, and that realization is infuriating. Their obsession is a mirror reflecting their inadequacies. They measure themselves against your consistency, your calm, and your self-reliance, and every comparison exposes their limitations. They thought monitoring you would give them control, but instead it highlights the distance between your mindset and theirs. You're not chaotic or mysterious because you want to confuse them. You simply live with clarity and purpose, something they haven't mastered. And while they waste energy trying to predict your life, you move forward unfazed, accumulating growth and depth while they remain trapped in observation. Their fear, frustration, and confusion are symptoms of one undeniable reality. You're already playing at a level they can't access, a level that no amount of surveillance can ever reach. They watch endlessly, but you continue to advance. Their obsession doesn't diminish you. It confirms your place above their comprehension, untouchable and unstoppable. while they scramble to make sense of a life they can never fully understand. Number 6. They can track your actions but not your growth, and that drives them insane. People who obsessively monitor you focus on what they can see, the obvious, the measurable, the external. They can log your movements, note your habits, and dissect your interactions, but growth doesn't show up on any chart or camera. Growth is silent, internal, and almost invisible unless you're living it. It's the decisions made when no one is watching, the discipline practiced in solitude, the small, consistent choices that compound over time. And because growth can't be captured, studied, or manipulated, it drives them mad. They expect progress to look like them, loud, immediate, and obvious. They want transformations that announce themselves, victories that come with applause. But your growth isn't performative. It's steady, deliberate, and unbothered by observation. Every new skill, every mindset shift, every deeper understanding accumulates quietly, out of reach of their surveillance. They watch your life like a reality show, hoping for a slip or a reveal, but what they can't see is the internal evolution that makes you untouchable. This creates a kind of cognitive dissonance for them. They have all the data, but the data doesn't add up. They can't reconcile the small, observable actions with the massive internal strides you've made. The more they try to explain you, the less sense you make. They keep expecting a person who fits their familiar formulas, but you're growing in ways that refuse to fit. Every step forward you take silently undermines their assumptions and exposes the limitations of their perception. And this is what makes them obsessed. They see the surface and assume they understand it, but beneath the surface, you're changing in ways that make every observation meaningless. They can never fully map you because they're measuring the wrong thing. You're not defined by moments they can witness. You're defined by the evolution they will never catch up to. Their frustration isn't about what you do. It's about what you become. And while they scramble to analyze the actions they see, your growth quietly leaves them behind, powerless, confused, and staring at a life they will never fully comprehend. Number 7. You dismantle their assumptions without even trying, and that's why they keep recalculating who they think you are. People observing you come with a set of expectations. They believe they can predict your decisions, understand your motivations, and anticipate your reactions. They've built a mental framework around who they think you are, and every action they see is measured against that framework. But every time you move, that framework cracks. You dismantle their assumptions effortlessly, not because you're trying to confuse them, but simply because you don't operate according to their limited rules. They expect consistency in the way they define it, repetition, conformity, predictability. But you're consistent in your values and principles, not in ways that fit into someone else's formula. Your choices are guided by internal logic, not by what people watching expect or hope for, and that's what frustrates them the most. Every time they think they've figured you out, you do something that defies their expectations, and suddenly their mental model collapses. This constant recalibration is exhausting for them because they're trying to apply patterns to someone who doesn't live in patterns. They want predictable reactions, but you react with authenticity, strategy, and foresight. They want moments they can control or exploit, but you're always operating on a level beyond their calculations. Every step you take forces them to start over, to rebuild the assumptions they thought were solid. Your ability to dismantle their assumptions isn't about being secretive or evasive. It's about being true to yourself, living in alignment with your values, and refusing to be reduced to a predictable formula. And while they scramble to make sense of it, they end up revealing more about their limitations than about you. The irony is that they remain obsessed, recalculating, trying to decode someone who cannot be decoded. And you continue forward, unbothered, leaving them trapped in confusion, exhausted by a system they built to understand the world, only to find that the world you inhabit doesn't follow their rules, doesn't fit in their boxes, and doesn't bend to their expectations. Every action you take quietly proves that their assumptions were never yours to conform to. Number 8. They gather information while you gather understanding, and understanding always wins. People who watch you think knowledge is power. They collect every detail, every movement, every snippet of information, believing that if they accumulate enough, they'll finally understand who you are. They track patterns, habits, relationships, and routines, convinced that observation alone will give them control. But the truth is, information without understanding is meaningless. You, on the other hand, don't just collect data. You interpret, internalize, and transform it into insight. That is the silent power they can never touch. They measure life in fragments, a word here, an action there, a gesture somewhere else. They expect these pieces to tell the story, to reveal the person behind them. But you operate differently. You don't just live in moments, you process them. You learn from experiences, adjust strategies, and evolve. Where they see scattered facts, you see connections, lessons, and patterns that lead to growth. Their notebooks may be full, their cameras may record everything, but all that information sits idle because they lack the ability to convert it into wisdom the way you do. This is why they stay confused. They think having eyes everywhere equals clarity, but clarity comes from understanding, not observation. You move through life with insight, making choices that are informed but not reactive, deliberate but not performative. Every step you take is calculated by comprehension, not conjecture. They're busy collecting evidence, while you're busy shaping your path based on lessons they can't access. And this imbalance frustrates them endlessly. They assume power lies in accumulation, but real power lies in interpretation. You understand motives, timing, human behavior, and self-mastery in ways that no surveillance can capture. Their data may be vast, but it's shallow. Your understanding is deep, nuanced, and actionable. In the end, they remain observers, while you remain the one living a life informed by insight. Knowledge without understanding leaves them guessing, frustrated, and perpetually behind, while your comprehension quietly guides your every move, giving you an advantage they will never bridge. Understanding always wins, and that's why no amount of watching can ever put them on equal footing with you. Number 9. Their surveillance wasn't designed for someone with your level of self-awareness, so all their data becomes useless. People who watch you assume they can predict and control by collecting every detail, recording every moment, and analyzing every action. They operate under the illusion that if they have enough information, they can fully understand you. But their whole approach is built on a flawed assumption. They assume people act according to external pressures, expectations, or impulses. You don't. You act from awareness, from a place of understanding that most people rarely reach. Every piece of data they gather becomes meaningless because they're trying to map a life that doesn't exist on their level. Your self-awareness is a private internal compass. It's the reason your choices seem unpredictable, your reactions seem measured, and your presence feels untouchable. You know yourself, your limits, your goals, and your priorities in ways that no camera, microphone, or observation log can ever capture. While they study your actions hoping for insight, you're living consciously, guided by understanding and deliberate intent. Their data is shallow because it only captures surface movements, never the reasoning behind them. The frustration this causes them is almost palpable. They're working hard to solve a puzzle that cannot be solved because the puzzle itself is alive and evolving. They expect contradictions, errors, or slips, moments they can analyze to gain control, but those moments don't exist. Every decision you make aligns with your principles, not their expectations. Every step is calculated by your internal clarity, not by fear, desire for approval, or impulse. The more they collect, the more useless it becomes. They have the raw material, but lack the framework to interpret it. They cannot see the internal logic that governs your life. Your self-awareness transforms you into a moving target, one that cannot be fully predicted or understood by someone operating with outdated tools and assumptions. Their obsession becomes a futile exercise. They can watch, record, and analyze all they want, but they will never grasp the full picture. And that is exactly why your life remains untouchable, misunderstood, and impossible to control. Their data fails where your self-awareness thrives. Number 10. They want to identify your weakness, but your strength is that you don't hide one. You outgrow it. People watching you are searching for cracks, blind spots, and vulnerabilities they can exploit. They expect weaknesses because everyone they know has them, and they assume you must too. They believe that if they study you long enough, if they track your every move, they'll eventually find the soft spot, the place where you bend, break, or falter. But they keep running into the same problem. You don't carry weakness the way they understand it. You don't hide it. You don't act like it. And even if something challenges you, you don't let it linger. You confront it, learn from it, and outgrow it. That's why their surveillance keeps failing. Your strength isn't loud or performative. It's quiet, steady, and continuous. It shows in the way you respond to challenges without panicking, the way you make decisions without needing approval, and the way you rise above situations that would overwhelm others. People expect weakness to be static, a point they can pinpoint and exploit. But your strength is dynamic. You evolve. You adapt. You don't wait for life to expose your limits. You push past them before anyone can even notice. This frustrates observers more than anything else because they operate on a fixed mindset. They believe that if someone appears invincible, it's either a lie or temporary. They can't comprehend the idea of a person who actively strengthens themselves, who intentionally converts difficulties into growth, and who refuses to let any challenge define or confine them. The more they look, the less they find, and every failed attempt to catch your weakness only underscores your resilience. Their obsession with identifying flaws ends up highlighting their own shortcomings, impatience, insecurity, and inability to evolve. Meanwhile, your life moves forward, every setback becoming a stepping stone, every challenge an opportunity to grow further. They're stuck watching, calculating, and failing to understand that strength isn't about perfection. It's about refusing to be trapped by weakness, refusing to be predictable, and refusing to be anything less than constantly advancing. And in that refusal, you remain untouchable, unpredictable, and far beyond their reach. Number 11. They're confused because you're not competing with them. You're competing with yesterday's version of yourself. Most people measure life by comparing themselves to others. They constantly look sideways, checking who's ahead, who's behind, and who deserves recognition. That's why they monitor you. They assume you're playing the same game, following the same rules, and striving for the same validation. But the truth is, you're not competing with them. You're competing with your own past, with the person you were yesterday, and that throws them completely off balance. Your focus isn't on outperforming someone else. It's on becoming better than you were before. Every step you take is measured against your growth, your understanding, and your evolution. They can watch all they want, but they will never see the internal benchmarks you set for yourself. You're not seeking approval, attention, or comparison. You're seeking progress. And that makes you unpredictable to anyone who expects life to operate in rankings, points, or social hierarchies. This is what confuses them the most. They see effort, movement, and achievement, but they can't figure out the logic behind it because they don't have the reference frame. They assume there must be a rival, a competitor, a reason tied to social dynamics. But your motivation is internal and unrelenting. You push yourself in silence, quietly outpacing your past without needing anyone to notice. Their surveillance becomes a futile exercise because you're evolving on a plane they can't access. They expect a game of status, recognition, and comparison, but you're playing a game without spectators, a game of mastery over self. Your victories don't fit their metrics, your choices don't align with their assumptions, and your focus can't be redirected by their opinions. The more they watch, the more they see a person they can't categorize, can't manipulate, and can't compete with. Your life becomes an enigma, not because you're secretive, but because you've removed yourself from their framework entirely. You're not their rival, you're your own standard, and that distinction leaves them frustrated, bewildered, and perpetually recalculating what they think they understand about you. Number 12. Their constant watching is proof that they depend on you more than they admit. People who obsessively monitor you act like they're in control, like they're the ones holding the power. But the truth is, the very fact that they watch so closely shows the opposite. They're depending on you. Every glance, every note, every attempt to decode your life is rooted in a quiet acknowledgement that your presence matters more than they're willing to admit. Your choices, your actions, your influence create ripples they can't ignore, and their dependence on understanding you exposes a truth they would rather hide. They keep tabs because your life triggers reactions they cannot manufacture themselves. Your confidence, your independence, and your ability to stay unbothered force them to reflect on their own insecurities. The more they watch, the more their lives orbit around the very thing they pretend to analyze objectively. You are, in a sense, a reference point in their existence, a standard they unconsciously measure themselves against, a life they secretly wish they could emulate or control. Surveillance isn't neutral. It's born from a mix of fear, curiosity, and reliance. They believe they're gathering information, but what they're really doing is tethering themselves to your energy. Your stability, your growth, and your clarity make them aware of what they lack, and that awareness keeps them invested. Every attempt to figure you out reinforces the fact that you influence their thoughts, their strategies, and even their moods. And the irony is exquisite. While they think they are the ones observing, it's you who sets the standard, who unknowingly drives their focus, and who dictates the terms of their frustration. Their obsession is a reflection of their dependence. They cannot let go because your life operates on a level that unsettles and challenges them. The more they try to monitor, predict, or understand you, the more obvious it becomes. They are wrapped up in you, dependent on the very presence they claim to control. And this unspoken truth only strengthens your position, silently proving that the watchers often need the watched more than anyone realizes. Number 13. They cannot control you because you don't need anything from them. Not approval, not acceptance, not permission. People watching you are conditioned to believe that power lies in influence. They think if they gather enough information, make the right calculations, or push the right buttons, they can bend someone to their will. But you operate outside that framework entirely. Your life isn't fueled by validation, approval, or recognition. You don't wait for permission to act, and you don't rely on anyone's acceptance to make decisions. That simple independence makes you untouchable to anyone trying to control you, and it confounds them endlessly. They look for triggers, something that will make you react predictably. They try to exploit emotions, weaknesses, or desires that are supposed to exist. But you have removed yourself from that system. You act from clarity and purpose, not from fear of judgment or need for affirmation. Because you don't depend on their approval, all their surveillance, manipulation, and calculations fail. Their attempts at control hit an invisible wall, a boundary they can't measure, define, or breach. This creates frustration and confusion that is almost visible. They are used to power being a two-way street. Influence over others requires some vulnerability, some leverage, some need. But with you, there is none of that. You don't operate on external incentives. You move according to internal standards, values, and understanding. Their expectations of control become irrelevant because you simply don't play by the same rules. And the more they try, the more apparent it becomes that their strategies are impotent. They record, analyze, and theorize, but none of it touches the essence of who you are. You are independent by design, unmanipulable by habit, and unshaken by their observations. Their obsession only highlights your autonomy. They are trapped in the act of watching, while you are free in the act of being. The truth is clear. Control is only possible when someone needs it to survive, to succeed, or to exist. You need nothing from them, which is why they remain perplexed, powerless, and endlessly recalculating, while you continue forward untouched and unconcerned. Number 14. The real reason they're still confused is simple. You don't fit into the categories they built for ordinary people. People who observe you are constantly trying to place you into a mental box. They have categories for what they understand: predictable, emotional, reactive, easily influenced, or dependent. They measure life with formulas, patterns, and assumptions that make sense in their limited worldview. But you defy every one of these categories. You aren't ordinary, and you never act in ways that fit their templates. That's why no matter how much they watch, analyze, or dissect, they remain baffled. Your actions, your decisions, and your growth follow an internal logic that they cannot access. You operate from self-awareness, clarity, and purpose, not from expectations, pressure, or validation. Their systems are designed for people who behave predictably, who react according to social norms, or who rely on external approval. You operate outside all of it. Every choice you make is informed by your understanding of yourself and the world, not by the frameworks they're trying to force you into. This is what drives their confusion. They expect patterns, rules, and weaknesses, but you are fluid, deliberate, and evolving. They record your habits, track your routines, and analyze your words, but all of it is superficial compared to the depth of who you are. The more they try to classify you, the more apparent it becomes that their categories are meaningless. They are attempting to understand something that cannot be understood with conventional tools. And that is exactly why they remain obsessed and frustrated. They feel the need to decode you, yet the very act of trying confirms their own limitations. Your unpredictability isn't chaos, it's clarity. Your independence isn't defiance, it's alignment with your own principles. Your life cannot be boxed, predicted, or controlled because it exists on a plane they have no access to. Ultimately, their confusion is proof of your uniqueness. You are operating beyond assumptions, beyond expectations, and beyond the categories they rely on. You are untouchable, unreadable, and entirely your own, leaving them perpetually scrambling to understand a life that refuses to conform to their ordinary vision. Conclusion. What all of this reveals is simple yet profound. No matter how much they watch, study, or analyze, the truth about you cannot be captured from the outside. Every attempt to monitor you only highlights the gaps in their understanding, their limitations, and their dependence on frameworks that don't apply to someone like you. You operate from clarity, self-awareness, and internal strength. You evolve while they stagnate, rise while they scramble, and grow while they remain fixated on trivial observations. Their confusion isn't a reflection of your complexity. It's a reflection of their inability to comprehend a life lived on principles, purpose, and independence. From your unpredictability to your resilience, from your internal direction to your refusal to compete with anyone but yourself, everything about you defies categorization. They gather data while you gather understanding. They search for weaknesses while you transform every challenge into growth. They look for patterns while you rewrite the rules by simply living your truth. The more they observe, the more you reveal, not secrets about yourself, but the fact that they will never fully grasp your essence. That is your power, your quiet dominance, and the undeniable reason they remain baffled. You don't need approval. You don't need permission. You don't need to fit into anyone's boxes. Your life moves forward with purpose and alignment, leaving observers endlessly recalculating, endlessly frustrated, and endlessly watching. And the most remarkable part, you do it all effortlessly, without the need to prove, explain, or perform. So remember, being truly untouchable doesn't come from hiding, manipulating, or resisting. It comes from understanding yourself, operating from integrity, and refusing to let anyone else define your worth or your path. You are not theirs to figure out. You are your own. If this resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, leave a comment with your thoughts, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Let's grow, evolve, and stay untouchable together. Stay awakened, chosen ones.